How would I classify him and why did I offer the opinion I did? We broadly divide seizures into either focal onset or generalized onset. With this EEG pattern, generalized onset is an entirely reasonable presumption. We have to recognize that the presence of generalized spike wave in the EEG doesn't guarantee that diagnosis. About 2/3 of people with generalized spike wave have a history of seizures and 1/3 don't. So could he have had a focal seizure and coincidentally had generalized spike wave? It's possible, but it's, I think, quite remote, and we should do it. And then again, he's presumably genetic. He has no risk factors. There's no reason to think that he has a symptomatic form of generalized epilepsy. And the classification of the epilepsy and the epilepsy syndromes looks at multiple bits of evidence, that's seizure types, EEG, any other risk factors to try and make a syndrome, so we can use various levels. In this case, the EEG is characteristic for a genetic form. The history is entirely compatible with it, and the diagnosis, I think, is quite clear. Does he need an MRI? In this case, no, I wouldn't even do an MRI. Only if he were unresponsive to medication would I then reassess my diagnosis. So what are the processes and tools that we use in making an accurate diagnosis? MRI is very important, as I just said. For idiopathic generalized epilepsy, it really serves no purpose unless you have to question the diagnosis. So that wouldn't be needed. EEG is key. Sometimes an initial EEG is negative. On average, the literature suggests that the EEG is positive about 50% of the time in the first case. And in people like this, if you do 3 EEGs, the yield goes up to 90 to 93%. Ideally, the second EEG would be enough because I'd be inclined to do a prolonged sleep study with ambulatory or at least a sleep-deprived study if we didn't have that at first. When will we do video EEG monitoring? Entirely unnecessary in new onset epilepsy, unless it's new onset status. So I occasionally see people who come to me, they had a seizure and they were admitted for monitoring. And I think the only person to benefit from this, quite honestly, is the EEG technologist whose job is preserved. Practically speaking, it serves no purpose. I think the EEG helps us classify it. If we have an answer, that's fine. Given his history of staring in class, we could try to refine that a little bit, but we don't have a good history, and we would have that. Perhaps better from parents, but parents often don't know and don't recognize.